next presenter is Dr. Jim Larson. He's a Professor Emeritus in psychology in the psychology department of the University of Wisconsin, Whitewater. And he's one of the founding members of the Melissa Institute Scientific Board. As you can see in his bio there, he has over 30 years of experience in the school, community, and youth residential treatment settings, including 14 years as a school psychologist for the Milwaukee Public Schools. He's a frequent contributor to the trainings the Melissa Institute brings to South Florida and other parts of the country, and we love him here. Thank you, Jim, for being with us, and you can take it.
Thank you very much for coming to this conference today. Let me begin by expressing my deep gratitude and appreciation to Lynn and Michael Appman for more than a quarter century of providing and facilitating that practical wisdom that Ron Slaby talked about. And thanks for letting me come along. Today, what we're going to talk about is working with young people who have reactive aggressive problems. Okay, it's a little more granular than some of the previous presentations. I'm going to look at knee-to-knee practices for doing counseling with these young people. Okay, school-based treatment. I'm a big fan of school-based treatment, being a school psychologist myself. Remember, there's an old thing about, there was a bank robber by the name of Willie Sutton. And when he got arrested, somebody said, "Why do you rob banks?" And he says, "Because that's where the money is." Why do counseling in school? Because that's where the kids are. So the kids who need these kinds of treatment interactions are in school. They're there already, and school is a wonderful place to treat them in. They're already immersed in the authentic setting. They're already in a setting where they have to learn how to navigate. There are peers around, there's authority figures around, and there are behavioral demands around. They have to learn to manage that. There are abundant, competent adults everywhere. Everywhere you look, there's some adult who can be useful to you. You can alter the antecedents and the consequences. What happens before that? What'll happen if you do this? And we can change that around. And there are multiple opportunities to train for generalization, which is critically important. Now, overall recommended training goals. What we want to do is, one, increase the capacity for personal self-control. What we often see in young people is this locus of control is too far out there. The locus of control is in somebody else. Why did you do that? And their finger goes up. Because of what he did. Who's responsible for that? She is. Okay, and so what we want to try to do over the course of this treatment is help the student take more responsibility for their own behavior. They get up in the morning and it's as if they feel themselves buffeted about by the winds of fate and have no control over that. We're going to reestablish some of that control. All right. They tend to play the have to game. Why'd you do that? Well, I had to. And we don't let them have that. We don't give that to them. We have an effort to make them take ownership of it. It was my choice to do that. Why are you in school? Well, I have to come to school. No, you don't. You don't have to come to school. Have to means no choice. You have a choice every day when you get up and you come to school. You made the choice to come to school today. And I think that was a very wise choice. And I congratulate you for that. You didn't have to hit him. You didn't have to say that to the teacher. You chose to. And so we, over the course of treatment, we get them learning this sort of language, talking in these kinds of personal control words. We're looking to increase the capacity for regulating feelings of anger. They have a tendency to think that anger is something that gets thrust upon them by somebody else. That, oh yeah, he made me angry. And we help them to understand where anger comes from, and that it's a function of what's going on in your own head. And that anger is can be seen on a continuum, that you don't have to be enraged every time you get angry. You can also be, let's say, irritated. You can also be, let's say, annoyed, and teaching them literally that vocabulary so that they can see, they get into a situation, they don't have to immediately go to 10. They can express their discomfort and express their disapproval hanging around in the 5s and 6s, and you don't get suspended in the 5s and 6s. Increase deliberate problem solving, how to think about what to do in any given situation. That's it. Deliberate and solve the problem. So we teach them a process for doing that. And increase the capacity for understanding using the perspective of others, recognizing that other people have their own, they're walking around thinking their own thoughts and having their own responsibilities. That teacher has her own thoughts, her own responsibility, and she is her own person. And you need to understand that she has her own perspective. She sees the situation differently than you see it. And that notion about understanding the perspective of others is the first step on the way to empathy, to actually having understanding and concern for the feelings of someone else. And to increase the commitment to academic progress. If you're going to do counseling in the school is what you want to have working for the child. And so one of the things that we stress is this is a school-based program, and we connect with teachers, we connect with administrators, we connect with the academic half of the program, because what we want to see is get that child, depending on what grade he's in, if he's in high school, get them to that graduation stage. That's one of the great protective factors that a child can have is a high school diploma. And so we work on getting them to that. A lot of collaboration with teachers. So I came up with 5 overarching principles, and I'm going to take you through them 1 through 5. Go to the next slide. We'll get them a time. Here's the principle 1. Understand the characteristics of youth who tend to show reactive aggressive behavior in contrast to youth whose typical behavioral patterns are proactive. Okay. So for our purposes, we look at 2 kinds of aggression. It's a little simple, but it works for us today. There's the proactive youngster and the reactive kid. Okay, next. Proactive aggression is goal-oriented. Think of bully behavior. Okay, that tends to be proactive. There's not a lot of anger in that. A proactive aggression wants something. I want money. I want respect. I want personal entertainment. I'm going to initiate the aggression. I'm not angry. I'm going to initiate the aggression for a purpose. Okay. Now, oftentimes that purpose is to hold status in the peer group or to climb in the peer culture. So a lot of bullying, you look at the bullying research with regard to peers, it is often associated with where am I in the peer group, and can I hold my spot here, or can I move up? And that has some implications as to who and when and behavior. There tend to have a friendship, literally a friendship organization. And secondly, they tend to see little reason to change. Life is pretty good. I do all right. I have friends. I don't get suspended much because I can figure out how not to get suspended. And they can have really pretty high self-concept. They think of themselves rather expansively. Okay. Consequently, they do very poorly in counseling therapy because there's no pain. There isn't any use to be gained by taking a child out of the classroom and saying, you need to change. And when he says, I don't need to change, I'm fine. I'm not in any form of fine. We go to psychotherapy, you and me go to psychotherapy because we're in pain, because something's not working in our life, either a relationship or something internal is not working. And so we go I'm in pain, so I will go and I'll pay the money and I'll take the time and I'll rid myself of this pain. If you don't have any pain, which a lot of the kids, particularly who follow that sort of bullying pattern, don't really have, then they don't do particularly well in counseling therapy. They may respond to supervision and behavioral consequences. There's in the reference sheet, which you should get a copy of. It's around McAdams and Schmitz have a article called Counseling Bullies. Okay. Now, that was proactive aggression. Reactive aggression, which is the focus of our talk today, is unplanned, impulsive, reactive anger, often leading to aggression. It's a reaction to what's going on in the environment, the way the individual has construed it. An angry reaction to someone else's perceived behavior or new circumstances, such as canceling recess. Everybody is, oh, and our guy is flipping his desk over, and that's not fair. Okay. They are often chronic discipline problems. What has often been called the frequent flyers down in the counselor's office, in the administrator's office. They do get into fully blown anger, kicking the furniture problems on a regular basis. Now, they can acquire new skills and skills-based counseling therapy, because that's what we're going to talk about today. They can do that because they are in some kind of pain. If you talk to them, they don't like the way things are going. It's not fair. And would you be willing to work with me to try to feel a little better about things? I don't know, maybe. Okay, so there is a sense of pain there that very often they are willing to make the effort to rid themselves of. Okay. One of the more important points of this talk is understanding that the reactive aggressive type of behavior is a function of some what we call social cognitive deficits and distortions from the social information model. Okay, so we'll get exactly that. Okay, next. So here's the beliefs held by many of these kids, if you just kind of think who they are. One, other kids try to make me angry on purpose. That's what I believe. Other kids, they're good. He wanted to make me. That's why he bumped my desk. I always have to be on the alert for an attack, you know, and there are no accidents. Everything is an attack. Adults will back down if I resist loudly enough. Oh, that's true, particularly parents. Revenge is better than making up. I want to get back. I want to get back aggressively. I don't want to shake hands and forget about it. I can't do that. I'm still wound up from it. And I don't have any reason to believe that everyone doesn't think exactly as I do. We all process things the same way. Okay? If you took a couple of middle schoolers, a couple of eighth graders, and you come into homeroom in the first hour of the day, and you say, look, you two guys come here. I've got a $50 bill. I will give it to you at the end of eighth period today if you have successfully avoided getting sent to the principal's office for some problem behavior. Okay? All you got to do is behave for a day. The proactive kid who's primarily proactive, primarily initiates the aggression himself or herself, that's money in the bank already. He's already thinking where he's going to spend it, and he probably will. He can do that. He can stay out of trouble. Not a problem. Our other guy who has the reactive aggressive type of protocol, he thinks he can do it too. He's, oh, good, but he can't. The chances are very high that he's going to not be able to do that and get down to the principal's office, but he thinks he can. He doesn't have a sense of what it takes to not do that, because he believes other people think exactly the same way he does. Okay. Reactive, proactive. There's literature on this that say, well, it's a dyad. You're either reactive or you're proactive. Others say, well, no, it's on a continuum. I tend to believe it's more on a continuum. Most of the kids have elements of both. You can get kids who are reactive and then go on and bully somebody. Your question is, if you're looking to say, okay, I want to do treatment with these kids and I want them to be pretty much the same, you want to ask yourself, how big a role does anger play in the problem that the child gets in? These are kids who are getting into problems in school, which is inhibiting them from being successful in school. How big a role does anger play in that? And if it's predominantly anger, then the child is perhaps of the reactive, on the reactive side of this continuum, and might be appropriate for the counseling therapy that we're talking about. Okay, so principle 2, recognize and plan for possible social information processing and deficits and distortions when treating reactive aggressive behavior. Social information processing deficits and distortions. Next. Social information processing has been a while in this field, has been around since the early 90s. A lot of the work of Kenneth Dodge and Nikki Crick and those and others have looked at how do kids decide what to do in any situation. How does one encounter become problem behavior? And they hypothesized that human social information is processed in a stepwise fashion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A child's behavior response to a stimulus is a function of 5 steps of processing. Okay. First of all, you attend to the available social skills. What's going on? You attribute meaning to it. What's the point? What should I understand about that? What I'm looking at there? What should I understand about that? You select the desired. How do I want to get out? How do I want to have this work out for me? Okay. Generate possible responses. Well, I could do this. I could do this. I could do that. Identify potential consequences of the response. What would happen if I did this? What would happen if I do this? And then you act out the response. Okay. This is something you and I do like this all the time. Okay. We're in the grocery store. You're about to grab the last can of SpaghettiOs off the shelf, and just as you're about to go there, somebody comes by and snatches it and walks away with it. We don't chase them down and start beating them up. We take that information, decide what's our outcome here, what do we want to have happen, and we select a response. Yes, I could chase him down. Yes, I could scream at him from here, or I could just ignore it and plan on SpaghettiOs next week, right? Which is typically what we do, which is, I know you do because you're not in jail. So, next, here's an example. You're a 6th grade middle school student walking down the hallway, headed for your next class. Another 6th grader who you don't know, coming from the other direction, bumps into you, and your books go flying. The other student pauses and then hurries away. Okay, and that event occurred. Next. So here are the steps. You're aware of and you recognize this run-in for you know what happened. Okay. You make an attribution that it was probably an accident. You say you attribute this behavior to accident. Okay. Desired outcome, you want to get your next class on time. That's what I want to have. That's what's on my mind right now. What could you do? You could chase him down, you could scream a vile name at him, or you could pick up the books yourself. You quickly assess the potential outcomes of each and select C, pick up the books yourself. You pick up the books and you head for class. That's a competent management of that particular problem. Okay. We're going to look today is how might reactive aggressive children be different in this way. It's biased or deficient processing at any step may lead to deviant behaviors or choices. Garbage in, garbage out. Of those steps, if you miss one, if you manage it incorrectly, that can lead to deviant behavior choice. All right. So if we look at this, there's our social information processing steps. All right. What we see in kids who have reactive aggressive difficulties is in step one, attending to available social skills, they tend to be hypervigilant for aggressive cues. They tend to identify behaviors as aggressive that most kids would not identify as aggressive. Standing in line at the water fountain, somebody pushes him from behind. That push becomes very salient, and he turns around, and the guy behind him is going, sorry. He's not seeing that. He's still processing the push, and boom, he's hit. Walk into the playground and pay attention to who might be making fun of me somewhere, who might be coming over to give me a hard time. Somebody bumps my desk. That wasn't an accident. That was aggressive. He did that on purpose. He wanted to make me mess up my work. Okay. A lot of paying attention to what's going on in my environment, which may be threatening. They give meaning to the cues is what they may have is what we call a hostile attributional bias. Their bias is towards hostility. The meaning that I give to the cue of what happened is biased towards hostility, because I think most of these kids in this school are hostile to me. And so chances are any interaction that I have with them may be driven by that hostility. So there's a bias in that the individual's construction of what the meaning is. Now, and the third one, select the outcomes. What do I want to have happen? What we know about these kids, they tend to take a higher value on retaliation than affiliation. I would much rather get back with him than shake hands and forget about it. I would much rather get back at him than just ignore it and forget about it. And so they engage in that. When somebody goes, you could have just forgot about that. That was you can just, I'm not going to forget about it. Narrow solution generate possible responses. What could do? They have a narrow solution generation ability. What could you do in that situation? What could you do? You're playing basketball, shooting baskets by yourself, and somebody comes over and grabs a ball and throws it way into the other yard over there, and then walks away. Okay, what could you do? I'll kick his ass. All right. What else could you do? I'll beat the snot out of it. Okay. What else could you do? I'll get my brother to come beat the snot out of it. Okay. They cannot come up with adaptive responses at the level that other kids can come up with adaptive responses. And more adaptive responses are quickly there and salient. And the less adaptive responses and kids are doing okay, get rejected. I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to punch him because I'll get into a fight. I don't want to get around and fight on the playground. Okay, so what we do in some of our training things, especially with adolescents, is we give them scenarios. You're sitting at your desk, you're sitting at the lunch table, and a kid who's new to the school walks by and whispers in his ear, whispers to you at the table, punk, and keeps walking. What could you do? Right? And we looked at what could you do, and we come up with all the things that they could do. Then what could you do if you didn't want to be suspended today? What could you do? All right? And see and check those differences. Okay. Identify the potential consequences of response. Okay, what will happen if I do that? What will happen if what will happen if I chased after the lady who took the SpaghettiOs? What will happen? Okay. And what they tend to do is to evaluate aggression positively. I'll get in a fight and then it'll be over. I'll show him. I will show him. Try that again. I can kick the basketball away from him and kick his ass, and he'll never do that again. Okay, that aggression is a good thing, and I'm a good fighter. My observation is they aren't. And my observation is they get beat up rather badly, rather frequently. And finally, act out selected responses. What we know about these kids and from working with them, it's really hard for them to learn new behaviors. It's really hard for them to come up with some other thing other than aggression, because they've relied on aggression for so long, even though it hasn't necessarily worked for them, but they rely on it. And as a consequence, coming up with something new, can you Can you instead take some deep breaths and walk away? Can you reframe this as an accident? Can you be assertive? Can you say, would you please watch where you're going? Thank you. I'm trying to do some work here. Please watch where you're going. That's assertive. Can you use humor? Is humor something that you can generate in that sort of situation? All right. But it's the older you get and the older they get, the harder it is to do that. The harder it is to replace well-established, albeit unsuccessful, behaviors with more adaptive ones. So here's our kid in the hallway again. So and there's the cognitive triad. Thinking influences feeling, which influences behavior, which then influences thinking again, and such. And so the thinking in this situation is then Emma bumped me on purpose. That's what I think. Okay, what does that do? That creates anger. And what does that anger do? What do I do with my anger? I am aggressive. Okay, and it follows itself around that way. Okay, principle 3: select group members with care. This is an important one. Not that they aren't all important, but this is one that tends to get overlooked. You might go back to your building and say, I'm going to do a anger and aggression management group. Now, I get 6 kids in it. Wonder if I can find the right 6 kids. Well, in most middle schools, in my experience, you go out into the hallway during class change time, and you can't swing a dead cat over your head without hitting 7 kids who need anger and aggression management training. And as soon as you say, I want to put this group together, there'll be a lot of opinions about who should be in it. And if you go down to the administrator and say, Ms. Johnson, I'm going to put together a group for kids who have anger and aggression management problems, she'll bring out sheets of paper of the kids she thinks ought to go in there. Right? The identification of who should go in there should rest on who will benefit from it. Okay, who has the potential to make changes over this period of time that you're going to run this group. Okay, and we'll get to a second what you're looking for. And you're going to consult, rather than just the administrator, who will give you all kinds of names, parents and teachers as well. Okay, they're the ones who see the child on an extended basis over time under different circumstances. Now, small group counseling is tier 2 programming, which means there must be a functioning tier 1 process in order. You need to look at that before you decide, I'm going to take this child out of the class and putting into a small group. That's a tier 2 intervention. If I need to look at what's going on in tier 1, do we have school and classroom rules? And are they being enforced? A lot of school and classroom rules are not really rules because they don't get enforced with any regularity. They are, in fact, not rules, but suggestions, okay, which the student is free to take or not take. Is there a check-in, check-out program going on in the classroom? Is there functional behavior assessment with classroom level interventions going on? Things that keep the child in the classroom. If that's going on and it's not being successful, then you move to tier 2, which is I'm going to pull his little body out of that classroom and put him into a small group where we're going to do skills training. Okay. Back. There should be regular attendance. There should be no co-occurring conditions that should take treatment, such as acute depression, substance abuse, or trauma. Okay. And finally, respect for self-determination. We want the child to assent to training. And so we have conferences, which we sit down with him and let him know the value of it and let him say yes, or let her say, yes, I want to do this. Yes, I'll try it. And we say, fine, try it. Give it once. And if you don't like it, we can move on. All right. But it's important that they approve it. They should have regular attendance. When we first started doing the Think First program in Milwaukee, we went to the administrator, said, let us have the your sheet of the kids who were having the most problems. And we identified 6 kids who were having the most problems and had our first group, and we were all set and ready to go, and all we're very excited and waiting for them. And every single one of them was cut in school. They just didn't come. Okay, so we wanted, it's one of the factors that you have when you think about who's going to do work. These are the kids who are quite likely to miss school. So get a regular attendance. Again, no occurring condition. Respect for self-determination. Next. Okay, the parents' role in screening. What do we want to get from parents in terms of screening? Home versus school behavior. How does he behave at home versus how does he behave at school? If you've talked to parents about how the kids behave at home versus how they behave at school, you will often find that they do much better at home. But there's a demand level difference. What somebody's requiring them to do a lot of things all day long in school that may not necessarily be so at home. What's the quality of the parent-school relationship? Are they cooperative, or has it become conflictual? It's not unusual for it to become conflictual over time. Effective management practice at home. What works? Mom, dad, what works? Okay, and there are procedures that of course you can't do, and there are procedures that might work well in terms of linking to the school. Other influential adults who might be helpful, so an uncle. Community supervision. Is he on probation? Need for parent training. Okay, is there a need for parent training? And we're going to talk a little bit about the Coping Power Program, which has a parent training component with it, where the parents receive training at the same time the kids are receiving their training. If you haven't done a lot of interviewing parents, and if you know that's I'm a psychologist, and that is generally our colleagues in social work who are good at that. And if you haven't done that, or you can't get a social worker to help you with that, or to say with you, the BASC parent information sheet is a good place to start. Involve classroom teachers during the identification of skills. Typically, the best informant on reactive or proactive growth. Teachers, particularly if you're working with self-contained classes, that if you're like a regular 4th grade or regular 5th grade class where there's just the one teacher, really a good informant. You should tell her what you're looking for. She can provide background information on peer relationships. How does this child get along with the other kids? Does he have any good friends at all? What sets him off currently in school? Family involvement and reinforcers. What is he like? Okay. Can offer real-time reinforcement of desired skill. We can have a skill that we're trying to get in the classroom and work collaboratively with that teacher so that she then is able to reinforce that particular skill. The teacher is an essential generalization agent. At some point or another, child goes back into that classroom and needs to generalize what he has learned in the group. They may have learned some techniques and some skills in the group. It's no good that they only do it in the group, because that's not where they go to school. They need to come out into the hallway and be able to use that skill in the hallway or in the classroom or in the gym or in the playground. Okay, so helping that teacher, if you have a good collaborative relationship with him or her, can be an excellent generalization agent and can help with progress monitoring. Where is the child now and before we got started in terms of these variables that we're interested in, and where is he along the way? We can monitor that along the way. Okay. The anger coping program, John Lockman's anger coping program, which you will find in a book called Helping School Children Cope with Anger, has a teacher nomination form. And he says, at least 3 of these: difficulties in interpersonal problem solving, prone to anger management problems and may use both physical and non-physical aggression, frequently disruptive, gives oppositional responses to teacher directives, seems rejected by the more adapted peers, and is having academic failure or underachievement problems. It's not working for him. Okay, so Lockman says at least 3 of those. That's sort of a gross screening. And you can, and there's some classes, and I've been in my work in Milwaukee, you can say, I want these kids who meet at least 3 of those, and if there's 35 kids in the school, I could get 20 names. Okay, next. I work with Colleen Cicchetti in Chicago, and we've been doing training in the anger coping program and Think First program in Chicago for over 10 years now. And we put together a screening guide for high school teachers who are considering referring a particular child for treatment. And run to the next one. We'll close in on this part here. We were interested in the level of connectedness that the child has and the number of protective factors. We know that both of these argue for greater success. So does the child have regular attendance, primarily passing grades, extracurricular activities, positive ongoing relationship with an adult in school, or some other kind of thing? Or protective factors, is there a successful older sibling, a positive involvement of parent and home or home care adults? Is the home supportive? Possibly an athlete, average or better intelligence, evidence of interpersonal skills, can be likable. Likable goes a long way. Good at or group testings in reading is proficient. Positive peer group and no co-occurring AODA documented mental health concerns. So we look at that, and that's just gives us some information that kind of completes the picture. This is adds to the picture. This is a page from the anger coping program. It's a simple, you give it to the teacher. How's this child doing now? Okay, I've got these 4 kids here. Tell me, can you rate them? Standard or widely rate them? Adherence to classroom rules and routines, self-control of vocal disruptive behavior, self-control of anger, homework return, in-class assignment effort, or something else. And that gets rated. Then when you finally identify the kids, what you have is a baseline. And you work off that baseline over time. Okay, next. So what we're doing is you've got the domains, you've got the protective factors and risk factors, and we're going to try to enhance or identify and strengthen the protective factors: emotional regulation, social problem solving, appropriate attributions, internal locus of control, and then we get into maybe parent involvement if we have the parent involved. School, we want academic competence and school bonding. And peers, social acceptance. You want to get him into a good peer that could, instead of being rejected as they often are because of their behavior, when they get that peer group a little more socially around him. Okay. Principle 4, move past cognitive insight to skill acquisition and multiple setting demonstration. This is a big one because too often we tend to stay on cognitive insight. Skills versus knowledge. Knowing about a new behavior is not the same thing as being able to enact that behavior under rapidly moving conditions of ambiguity and emotion. If you take anything back to your school, take this. If I were, say to you, I'm going to teach you, I'm going to spend the day teaching you how to fly a Cessna 150 airplane, single prop airplane. I'm going to teach you how to do that. And we'll spend the day doing it. And I'd teach you how to get in, what the dials and things mean. How do you get the thing? How do you start the engine? How do you get it moving down the runway? How do you get it up in the air? How do you make it go left? How do you make it go right? What's an aileron forward? What's that word? How do you get it to come down? And how do you get it to land and turn it off? And we do that. We'd spend a day learning that. And because you're really smart and I know what I'm doing, and as a teacher, you'll all get a 100 on it. You'll all get a 100 on this multiple choice flying a Cessna 150 airplane. And so then I say to you, okay, I want you to go to Miami Airport. I've got one waiting for you. Get in it and fly it to Orlando, and I'll meet you there. Now, it's unlikely that any of you who do not have flight experience would do that. And I say, well, why not? You know how do you start it? Well, you do this. How do you make it go up in the air? Well, you do this. Well, how do you make it go right? Well, you do this. And I said, what do you mean? You know what you're supposed to do? Yeah, I just don't know how to have the skills to do it. And this applies to school behavior as well. If I heard an administrator say once, I've heard him say 1,000 times, he knows the rules. And that's makes the administrator feel good for sanctioning the child, because what's the rule against fighting? Yeah, see, what are you fighting for? You know that's against the rules. Okay. To which the child is thinking, I know the rules. I simply don't have the skills to follow them. I know how to play baseball. I know the rules of baseball. But if somebody said, okay, here's a glove, you're starting at shortstop for the Marlins tomorrow, and I'd be killed, and there was no chance. And somebody would say, when somebody came up to me and said, don't you know the rules? When you get a ground ball, you have to pick it up and throw it to first base. I've never had a ground ball come that fast to me, though. So it's there's a difference between knowing what you're supposed to do and having the skills to do it. Okay, I know I'm not supposed to fight. I know I'm not supposed to scream at the teacher. I know I'm not supposed to kick the chairs over. I just don't know how to do the other thing. And that's what skills training is all about. So in skills acquisitions, we have essential cognitive insights, things that you need to know and be able to do. No, there's a relationship between thoughts, feelings, and behavior. What you're thinking influences how you feel. What you feel influences what you do. Help them to understand it. And you'll be surprised how well they can understand that. Another piece of knowledge is personal choice behavior, which we in the Think First culture, PCB, which means you keep that external locus of control and you stop blaming your behavior on other people. Yes, he said that. You're the one who chose to hit him. Okay, he didn't make you hit him. You're the one who chose to hit him. Okay, yes, your teacher said that. Yes, she was mistaken. That gave her nothing. That was no call for you to call her that and kick over the chair. All right, that was your choice. You chose to do that. And we get to that sort of have to thing. Oh, I hate to have to come to school. You don't have to come to school. I hate to have to do all this homework. You don't have to do your homework. You don't have to do any of those things. The only thing you have to do one day is leave this veil of tears. But otherwise, everything else is pretty much a choice. So don't tell me you have to do that. You chose not to do that. You chose to say that to the administrator. That's what your choice was. He didn't make you say that to him. I don't care how angry he was trying to make you. You chose to say that to him, and so the responsibility comes to you. And understanding a problem-solving sequence, like it shows on the next page. What's my problem? What are my choices? What are my foreseeable consequences of each? Which one is in my best interest? Now do I have the skills to do it? Now, so you see how that follows that social information processing? Follows that very closely. And this is what you and I do like this. Boom. Okay. What Kahneman calls system one thinking. Boom, got it. Okay. The skills acquisition. What do we want them to learn? Here's what we want them to understand, what we want them to be able to do. Anger, arousal, recognition. Need to know when you're getting angry. How can you tell when you're getting angry? You and I know that. You know what it feels like when you're getting angry. If you're sitting around the dinner table and Uncle Fred just won't shut up. And you can feel yourself getting angry. Okay. And you know what that's like. And excuse me, I'm going to go into the kitchen for a second. We recognize when we're getting angry, and then we are able to pull that anger down. We'll be able to moderate it somewhat. Okay. Anger regulation, self-talk, self-calming, other methodologies. I am not just because I'm angry doesn't mean I can't do something about it. Doesn't mean I can't lower the anger so much. I'm not the slave of my feelings. My feelings are influenced by my thinking. So what can I think here to bring that anger down from an anger 10 to an anger, from being enraged to just being irritated? What can I say? What can I do? Okay, what are some self-talk and self-calming measures I can use? Application of problem-solving methodologies. Okay, what can I do? What's the problem, et cetera, et cetera. Use of new situationally adaptive behaviors. I want to learn how to do that. I want to learn how to be assertive. I've never tried being assertive. Teach me how to do that. I will teach you how to do that. Okay, and generalization learned to multiple environments. You don't go to school here in the group room, you go to school out there. So we've got to work on generalization. If you want to hear a master class on generalization, I've given a link to Dr. Meichenbaum's lecture on generalization. You'll never hear it explained so thoroughly and so well. I recommend it to you. Next. Generalization of beingness. Okay, this is what we're doing. So the whole goal of having these young people in this group room for this period of time was to get them to be able to engage in more adaptive behavior in the authentic environment. So we rehearse in multiple environments with multiple persons. We may do some role playing in the boys' bathroom. We may do some role playing in the art room. Everybody gets into trouble, and we get the art teacher involved, and we're going to put up some scenarios, and we're going to do some role playing in there. Okay, we're going to assign brief homework tasks. This is what I want you to do. We'll collaborate on the task. What do you think you can do? Tell me when you're going to do it, and let me know if you need support. Okay, we secure available generational support person. Mostly in younger grades, it's the classroom teachers, and in high schools, less so. We often get people that are sort of around. We've used hall aides as generation support people, coaches, anybody who may not have the individual in a class. We teach them what it is we want them to do. We give them a little forum on what should I do if I'm going to be a generation support person for this person. Okay, and then that's sort of attaboy. Hey, I hear you're doing really good and think first. Good for you. Good for you. Hey, I was talking to Mr. Johnson today. You haven't been suspended in 2 weeks. That's a record. Good for you. Good for you. Okay. Strategically place memory aids, little notes in the locker. Don't use the east door in the morning. Use the north stairway after fifth period, that sort of thing. Schedule problem solving booster sessions. So once we have worked our way through what the curriculum has, what the program has, then we set up booster sessions. We meet every 2 weeks. You come back and we do problem solving. And we shore up any areas that are having difficulties. We rehearse difficulties that you're having and have you learn to manage them in a more adaptive way. And then we see what happens 2 weeks later. Okay. And ultimately, we want to get to the point where we have the kids are able to consult. They're able to train other kids. And so we bring them back in on our next year's group, and they talk about what they've learned and talk about what they were in September, what things were like for them in September, and how it's different for them in March. Okay, so that's really important. It solidifies it. It's very powerful on the new kids, and it's very powerful on the individual who's doing the teaching. Okay, I put some resources for you to consider, and they're all useful. Some of which we're probably familiar to. Good old aggression replacement training, been around forever. It still has its uses. Most of its work is with kids in the justice system. I want you to focus on these two. John Lockman has done some of the most useful and scholarly work in working with these kinds of kids. And he started out with a program called the Anger Coping Program, and now is working with a program called Coping Power, which is sort of like anger coping on steroids. Anger Coping Program and the Coping Power all train these things. Anger coping on grades 3 to 7, Coping Power 3 to 7. Back up, please. Research support, both on CBT orientation, training, 12 sessions for anger coping, and 33 sessions for Coping Power. There is no parent training procedure in anger coping. There's a parent training system that is suggested. It's really difficult for school people to do parent groups. But if you find yourself able to do that, then there's a good curriculum on that which sort of matches what's going on with the kids. Okay. Both of them train goal setting, awareness of feelings and anger arousal, anger self-control, where we teach them to manage. We give them cards and say, I want you to memorize these cards while the other kids are teasing you. Okay, we're going to do a domino while the other kids are teasing you. Right, and use of self-statements for anger control. We have them stand on one side of the line, and the rest of the group is over here, and the focused individual is over here. And these kids do their best to make him angry by calling him every name they can possibly think of, teasing him as much as they possibly can. There are some boundaries, and there's something you can't swear, and we keep boundaries on it. But it can be, you have to manage it. You have to, and we teach them to use coping language while this is going on, and we do this over and over and over again. We teach them relaxation for anger control. Perspective taking, knowing what that teacher might have been thinking when that teacher came over to you and said that, what do you think was going through her mind? What do you think she was thinking? Right? Social problem solving. And they both do a videotape production where the kids get to sort of show off what they have learned through making a little videotape that they then can show in a graduation exercise that we have. If you are looking for something to manage the initial interview with a child who has gotten into some difficulty, particularly of the anger and aggression management, and the principal sends them down to your office and says, "You talk to this kid, or I'm going to suspend him or something, but you talk to him first." And so you get a chance to talk. There is a wonderful program that, again, Dr. Meichenbaum has put together called Problem Solving Discourse. It's available at absolutely no charge on the Melissa Institute website. And there's a video that Don and I put together that's supported, to let you see what it is, an example of working with an aggressive child. Next. So this has this notion has three phases. Starting out when I first meet the child with a collaborative alliance, sort of defuse the emotion. Okay, I see you're still angry about that. Let's see what we can. So you obtain a timeline of what happened. Tell me in your words what happened that led to this. Okay, then phase two is the problem solving phase. Now, the teachers help the students develop more pro-social alternative. What else could you have done? Okay, and take more responsibility. Who was responsible for that? Okay, and what else could you have done? And finally, the implementation. Now the individual is going to take what he or she has picked up and learned and practice and master and apply the transfer of what they're doing from the group room into the regular. Now this is working with individuals. Anger coping and coping power are working with groups. All right. I don't think we have enough time. There's a little video, but if you go on the Melissa Institute website, the whole video is there, and I recommend it to you. And I will say thank you very much.